He leaned over Xenia, lying motionless in the coma, and whispered words he'd never dared speak to her face. He had no idea someone was hiding under the bed, listening to every word. Kirill moved slowly toward the doors of the private clinic in central Moscow. He had been here many times before, yet each visit filled him with the same irritation and exhaustion. He preferred taking the stairs rather than the elevator. Too many people rode it, and he had no desire to encounter other patients or staff. Climbing step by step, he felt a quiet shield against prying eyes and unnecessary questions. In his hands he carried a hastily bought bouquet, small white roses, pale as the clinic walls. He knew Larissa couldn't see them, couldn't smell them, but showing up without flowers would look odd. Even now, with his wife lying in a coma for a month, the flowers felt like a wasted gesture. Still, Kirill gritted his teeth. He needed to maintain the appearance of a devoted husband. The clinic hallway blinded him with its harsh white light. His eyes squinted after the long night spent wandering bars with friends, smoking hookah, drinking, reliving a time when life was simpler. He hadn't wanted to go home, but eventually someone had dragged him into a taxi. And now, morning brought its usual companions, a dry mouth, a throbbing in the temples. Before entering, he paused at a mirrored storefront to compose himself. His face looked pale, exhausted, his eyes red and foggy. He smoothed down stray hairs, adjusted his collar. He appeared slightly more put together, but the reflection revealed the strain he couldn't hide. As Kirill ascended the stairs, his thoughts darkened, spiraling back to the harsh reality. Every day in this private clinic cost a fortune. The medical equipment, the procedures, every hour of her coma drained his wallet. Each step up made his irritation swell. Larissa showed no signs of improvement, yet everyone insisted on optimistic forecasts. Outwardly, before Larissa's parents and the doctors, he played the devoted husband. Inside, dissatisfaction festered. He thought of the possibilities her death would bring. The apartment, the money, the business, all his. Since their wedding, Larissa had never let him fully control the company, though he believed he could handle it better. His ambition surged. She had built the business, now it was time for him to take her legacy and finally step out of her shadow. Still, he couldn't risk moving her to another facility. That would raise questions with her parents and the doctors who might see through him. He needed to keep the mask of care. It was simpler, safer. Kirill gripped the bouquet tighter, anticipating the meeting with Larissa's parents. They, especially Svetlana, watched his every move, scrutinized his expressions and tone. Soon they'd accept him as the devoted son-in-law, willing to be at her side day and night. Kirill had learned to master the look of sorrow and fatigue, a slight squint to suggest emptiness within. The flowers, the pretense of grief, it was all a fade, but he couldn't abandon the role. His survival, at least without raising suspicion, depended on it. Larissa's coma might last weeks, months, he didn't know. He told himself it was necessary to avoid questions, to keep anyone from probing his true feelings. Another difficult week, but we managed to stabilize her condition, said Dr. Brusina, his voice steady yet forceful, as if explaining something critical. Kirill paused at the door, flinching at the sharp scent of disinfectant. He didn't mind eavesdropping. Entering now would force him to act attentive, sympathetic. The doctor's voice carried urgency. Now it's important to maintain a positive mindset and do everything we can to support Larissa. Kirill's grip on the bouquet tightened. Inside, his thoughts swirled, calculating, impatient. Outwardly, he would remain the devoted husband. Inside, the storm was just beginning. Svetlana, Larissa's mother, spoke with a trembling voice, as if holding back tears. Is there any chance she could come out of this coma? Kirill rolled his eyes. He had heard that desperate question countless times before, yet each time it grated on him, the way the doctor skirted around giving a straight answer. As Dr. Brusina spoke again about recovery chances, Kirill felt irritation welling up, pressing at his throat. It was all a reminder of the pointless drain on money that he couldn't stop. Svetlana Petrovna, we're doing everything we can, Brusina continued gently. Larissa's young, her body responds differently. In cases like this, surrounding the patient with care is crucial. We're already seeing small improvements, which is a positive sign, Svetlana sniffled. Thank you, doctor, thank you for not giving up. Kirill wanted to storm inside and call it all empty words, but instead he gripped the bouquet tighter, feeling irritation spike. It seemed to him that Brusina was just profiting from their family, keeping Larissa in this state to milk money from them. Brusina stood by Larissa's bedside, watching her pale face and the pulsing vitals on the monitor. He turned to Svetlana and Boris standing together and spoke softly, carefully, with the caution that mattered in such cases. Right now, it's crucial to continue surrounding Larissa with care, he said. Research shows that patients in a coma can often hear the voices of loved ones. The more you communicate with them, the higher the chances of recovery. You mean she can hear us? Svetlana lifted her head slightly, eyes red from tears, but shimmering with a fragile hope. Yes, the doctor nodded. We can't be certain, but there's reason to believe she can perceive sounds, even individual words. Sharing memories, telling her positive stories, this can stimulate her brain and potentially improve her condition. The key is to maintain a positive mindset, no matter how difficult it feels. Svetlana clutched her husband's hand tightly. Of course, doctor. We'll talk to her, we'll stay by her side. She needs to know we love her, that we're waiting. Boris, usually calm and reserved, now looked vulnerable and anxious. And what else can we do? The doctor paused, then continued. Bring her familiar things, her favorite music, recordings of your voices, favorite stories. We've observed that such stimulation can positively affect patients, reminding them of life and family, possibly evoking hidden responses. Svetlana pressed against Boris again, whispering through sobs, We'll do everything, Boris. Everything we can. She'll hear us. I know our girl will come back to us. Dr. Brusina offered an encouraging smile, nodding at the parents who clung to every possible hope. Kirill, standing in the shadow by the door, felt his irritation surge. It all sounded like pointless chatter, talk of hope, of positive thinking. He almost groaned as the doctor mentioned mindset again. To Kirill, it all seemed a futile attempt to postpone the inevitable. No matter how hard Svetlana and Boris tried, in his eyes, it was meaningless. Larissa would already be dead, if not for the expensive treatments, the cursed machines, and the annoyingly precise Dr. Brusina, who seemed determined to squeeze money from them to the last ruble. He wanted it all to end, the endless chatter about stimulation, attention, and hope, once and for all. Standing by Larissa's bedside, Kirill's thoughts drifted involuntarily to the past. He remembered the first time he saw her, at a business forum discussing construction projects and materials. Larissa stood confidently on stage as a speaker, commanding the room with authority, grace, and absolute calm. Her voice carried certainty, leaving no room for doubt. All his skepticism, all his preconceived notions about women in business evaporated the moment she spoke. He had nervously gathered courage to approach her, aware of his own insignificance, a low-level manager at a building materials company, while she was the head of a major construction firm. Yet Larissa met his interest with a friendly smile, effortless and warm, as if she didn't notice his modest position. She asked no unnecessary questions, made no judgment about his role. For her, it didn't matter. The harsh, cutthroat world of business seemed less intimidating in her presence. That sense of comfort was intoxicating. Larissa was different, and that difference drew him in. The first months of their marriage felt like a serene fairy tale. Larissa surrounded him with comfort. Everything he had once only dreamed of became part of his new life. She bought him an expensive car. She introduced him to important people. And Kirill felt it, how quickly his status was rising. At some point, he even began to forget who he had been, an ordinary manager who could never have imagined a life full of luxury and influential connections. But the deeper he sank into this new world, the stronger his desire grew to climb even higher. Everything that once seemed like a privilege slowly started to feel like his due. Kirill began to question why, even as Larissa's husband, he remained in the background. Her company was growing, and so were his ambitions. He used to enjoy discussing work with her, listening to her plans, but now it weighed on him. He felt he could do better. At first this irritation was almost imperceptible, a quiet shadow at the edges of his mind. But with each passing month, it hardened into a relentless hunger for more. He didn't just want to be her husband, he wanted everything she had. The thirst for power burned inside him, and he knew there was no turning back. Gradually, all his old feelings for Larissa began to fade. Jealousy and inner tension crept in. He no longer saw her as the partner he had once loved. She had become, in his eyes, an obstacle to his success. Her company, her wealth, her connections, they were symbols of opportunities he couldn't afford to miss. Kirill's thoughts started drifting to a dangerous place. What if she weren't there anymore? All her assets and businesses would fall into his hands. Then he could finally live the life he wanted. He began to construct mental plans for the future, imagining himself at the helm of her company. With each day, the idea of inheritance grew more consuming. Soon, he couldn't imagine any other life. Kirill stepped into the hospital room, forcing his face into an expression of weary concern. Svetlana and Boris were already sitting by Larissa's bedside. He exhaled slowly and approached them, clutching a bouquet. Svetlana immediately noticed him and smiled gratefully, stepping closer. "Kirill, thank you for being here with us," she said, her voice trembling as she laid a hand on his shoulder. "We appreciate everything you do for Larissa." Kirill nodded, feigning compassion. "Larissa has always meant everything to me. I have to be here, Svetlana Petrovna," he added, his voice heavy with a sorrow he didn't feel. Inside, a flicker of irritation stirred. He hated the act he was forced to perform, but he understood there was no alternative. As long as everyone saw him as the devoted husband, no one would question his intentions. Boris, solemn, nodded and patted him on the shoulder as if reading his thoughts. "You're a true husband, Kirill. Larissa is lucky to have your care." At that moment, Dr. Breskin returned to the room. He nodded politely to Larissa's parents, but when his gaze landed on Kirill, his expression stiffened. The doctor's sharp eyes seemed to see through him into something he wanted hidden. Kirill met the stare, keeping his own irritation in check. He disliked the doctor's bluntness and his apparent indifference to money, traits that always triggered tension in him. "I'm glad you're here," Breskin said calmly, his eyes locked on Kirill. "Larissa needs her family's presence. And you," he gestured toward her parents, "must also take care of yourselves. This is a difficult time for all of us, but the support you give her can make a crucial difference." Svetlana sniffled, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Doctor. We'll do everything we can." Kirill forced himself to suppress the irritation rising inside. To him, it all felt like a theater where he was forced to play a part, maintaining the image of the perfect husband. In the quiet room, where the soft hum of hospital life filled the air, a faint sound caught his attention, a subtle creak of the door, a tiny shuffle of little feet. A girl, no more than 7, appeared, her curly hair bouncing as she stepped lightly across the floor. Her eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and excitement, as if she were embarking on a secret adventure. Polina had been living in the clinic for some time, a tiny resident and unofficial adopted child of the hospital. She didn't remember her parents, and her life had been anything but easy. After several surgeries, she still needed constant care, but that never dulled her lively curiosity or her drive to explore the world around her. Earlier, she had overheard a nurse call Larissa a sleeping princess. The idea took root instantly in Polina's little mind. She decided it was her mission to protect the princess, to always be near her, so she would never feel alone. Huddled under Larissa's bed, Polina held her breath, peeking out from her hidden vantage point. From this clever little corner, she could see Larissa's serene face and thought she looked like she was sleeping in a fairy tale, ready to wake at any moment. Polina pressed her small, worn teddy bear close, a constant companion and trusty sidekick for this important mission. In her imagination, the bear was as devoted a guardian as she was. "Can you hear me?" she whispered to Larissa, her voice soft, almost as if hoping her words could reach the girl. "You're like a princess from a fairy tale. I'll be right here, and then you won't be afraid." Polina spoke quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness of the hospital room. Her little heart overflowed with warmth and a childlike devotion, as if she could truly protect Larissa from everything. Nestling herself under the bed, she began to share her life in hushed tones, as if Larissa could hear her. Her voice was gentle and trusting, like confiding in a friend. "You know," she began, burying her face in the soft fur of her teddy bear, "I never had a mom or dad. I grew up in an orphanage. There are lots of kids there, but sometimes it's so lonely, especially at night. When I came here, I thought I'd be scared. But there's Dr. Bruskin. He's very kind, and he says I'll get better soon. And you'll get better too. I know it." Polina's eyes shone, as if convincing herself that she and Larissa were truly together, like two friends who no one could ever separate. "I'll visit you every day," she continued, leaning closer to the bed, "and as soon as you wake up, we'll be together. You could even be my mom if you want. I don't really belong to anyone except Dr. Bruskin, but he's not like a real dad." She let out a deep sigh and hugged her teddy bear tighter. Her face glowed with a quiet hope, as if simply finding Larissa, the princess, gave her someone close to confide in. Polina often spoke to Dr. Bruskin like he was an old friend. He was the only adult who showed her genuine care and attention. Every day she told him everything, about her loneliness in the orphanage, about her hopes that Larissa would wake up soon. He always listened patiently, answering her questions with kindness. One day, after another of their little heart-to-heart conversations, Dr. Bruskin handed her a small package with a warm smile. "Polina, this is for you," he said. "I think it will become your friend, especially when you need someone to talk to. This teddy bear can record everything you tell it and play it back, just like a real parrot." Polina's eyes widened as she unwrapped the package to find a soft teddy bear with a small button on its belly. "Thank you, Dr. Bruskin," she exclaimed, clutching the toy to her chest. "Now I can tell it everything, even if you're not here." The doctor smiled, patting her head gently. "You can tell your teddy anything you want. Maybe it will even help Larissa hear your words when you're nearby." Day by day, Polina grew more attached to Larissa, visiting her every evening and hiding under the bed or in empty closets. Her childlike imagination came alive in the quiet room, as if she were part of an old fairy tale read to her long ago in the orphanage. "You know," Polina whispered, sitting beside the bed and gently stroking Larissa's hand, "when you wake up, you could be my mom. I need a princess too, someone to take care of me." She spoke with sincerity, her small heart believing that her care could work miracles. In her mind, Larissa was the only person who could fill the emptiness inside her, the one she had been waiting for. She was convinced Larissa could hear her and feel the warmth of her words. Polina continued telling the sleeping princess about her dreams, imagining the day they would finally be together. Every night she left the room, believing that even her small acts of kindness were helping Larissa slowly emerge from the darkness. Polina was once again hidden under Larissa's bed when suddenly the door slammed open. Kirill entered. The girl froze, pressing herself to the floor to avoid being seen. Kirill walked straight to Larissa's bed without looking around. His face was a mix of irritation and exhaustion. There were no flowers, no familiar signs of a caring husband. He looked focused and angry, like he was ready to unleash all his pent-up grievances. Polina's heart pounded in her chest as she clutched her teddy bear tighter, straining to hear him. "How long is this going to go on, Larissa?" he said coldly, staring at his wife's motionless face. "You've been lying here for over a month with no progress. I'm not going to waste my life and money on this farce. He stepped closer to the machines that kept her alive, his hand hovering near one of the buttons. "If you only knew how much you cost everyone, and you didn't even warn us this is how it would end," he said, bitterness and anger sharp in his voice. "Do you think anyone needs this? Do you think your mother can cry by your bed forever? Or that I should waste the rest of my energy waiting for you to finally die?" Polina, pressed into the shadow under the bed, felt her tiny heart hammering with fear. She didn't understand all of Kirill's words, but his tone, his face, told her everything. There was no trace of sympathy or warmth, nothing like she had seen from other visitors. She held her teddy bear tighter, searching for any protection from the storm of his fury. Kirill reached for the machines again. At that moment, Polina trembled so violently that it seemed her own breath might betray her. She felt that something terrible was about to happen. Kirill stood by Larissa's bedside, his hand hovering over the button that could shut off the machines. But at the last second, he froze. His expression flickered with hesitation. He glanced around, as if sensing someone's gaze upon him, and then slowly lowered his hand, composing himself. "Not today," he muttered, as though deciding to postpone whatever he had planned. Paulina held her breath, watching his face shift from rage to confusion. She noticed his uncertainty, the slight tremor in his fingers. Maybe he feared the consequences, or perhaps he just couldn't bring himself to take that final step. But seeing this weakness, she felt a flicker of relief, brief and fragile, while at the same time her tiny heart was filled with dread at everything she had witnessed. Shaking and unable to hold back her tears, Polina ran down the clinic corridors to Dr. Brusen's office. She found him in the reception area and abruptly stopped to catch her breath and gather her thoughts. The doctor immediately frowned at her pale face and frightened eyes. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling to meet her gaze. Polina clutched his hand, barely able to speak through her sobs. "Doctor, there was a cruel man with Larissa. He said horrible things. He wanted her too." Her voice quivered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Dr. Brusen's brow deepened with concern. "Who was it, Polina? Can you tell me?" he asked gently, stroking her hand to calm her. "It was her husband," Polina whispered, looking directly into his eyes, full of earnest sympathy. "He said he was tired of waiting, that she needed to leave. I think she could hear me. I spoke to her, and she moved her finger." The doctor took a measured breath, studying the girl carefully. He knew her words might carry a touch of imagination, but he could not dismiss her fear. "Listen, Paulina," he said softly, "why don't you take a little rest? I'll check on Larissa. You did the right thing telling me." Paulina nodded, though her face still showed anxiety. Dr. Brusen escorted her to the pediatric wing doors, leaving her with a nurse, then headed to Larissa's room. Once inside, he approached the monitors and scrutinized her vitals. He checked them daily, but today he looked closer than ever. Polina had said Larissa moved her finger, and even minutes later, he noticed the faintest fluctuations on the chart. A subtle response, almost imperceptible, that suggested Larissa's brain might finally be reacting to the outside world. A glimmer of hope sparked in Dr. Brusen's mind. "Maybe you can hear me after all, Larissa," he thought. He leaned closer. "Your loved ones are here with you," he whispered. When Larissa finally began to regain consciousness, the world seemed blurry and foreign. Her body felt heavy, like a wave of lead wrapped around every muscle. Gradually, shapes and sounds became distinguishable. The first clear image she saw was the face of a little girl with bright blue eyes and curly hair, radiating genuine joy and relief. "You're awake," Polina whispered, hands pressed to her chest. Her voice overflowed with tenderness and excitement. Larissa fought back tears, smiling weakly. "Hello?" she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. "Who are you, my dear?" Polina grinned wider, holding Larissa's hand. "I've been visiting you every day, telling you everything. You could hear me. You even moved your finger when I said something important." Larissa nodded, still struggling to comprehend it all, but feeling the warmth of the girl's hand and joy. Something in her mind began to clear. "I wanted to be your daughter," Polina said quietly, looking into Larissa's eyes. "I have no one, but I'm a princess, and I've been waiting for you." Feeling a tender connection, Larissa squeezed the girl's hand. For a moment, she imagined that Polina could indeed become her daughter. But their joy was pierced when Polina's voice faltered. "When you were weak, the angry man, he said you wouldn't survive. He didn't come often, but I remember. He's your husband." Larissa tried to grasp her memory. Fragments of words and sounds floated in her mind, sending chills down her spine. She vaguely remembered voices intruding into her consciousness, though at the time she thought them only painful dreams. Was it real? "What did he say?" she whispered, her heart tightening with fear. Polina lowered her head and repeated the chilling fragments she remembered. "He said he was tired of waiting, that he was done with you. You should have just died." The girl swallowed hard, lowering her gaze. "I thought he was going to do something terrible to you, but he didn't. He changed his mind, I think." Her words pierced Larissa like a cold knife. The memory of Kirill's voice, threatening, full of hatred, rushed back, filling her with a spine-chilling realization. These were not nightmares. These were the words of her husband, the man she once loved and trusted. Seeing Larissa's shock and fear, Polina suddenly remembered her little helper. She jumped to her feet. "Wait, I'll be right back." Before anyone could stop her, she dashed from the room. Minutes later, Polina returned, clutching her beloved teddy bear. She knelt beside Larissa, carefully placing the bear on her lap. Pressing a button, a faint squeak echoed, and then Kirill's voice came through the toy. Cold. Sharp. Malicious. "How long will you keep holding out?" The recording hissed. "How long will you torment us all? Do you think I want to come here every single day? You should just leave. Even your parents would have an easier time if you gave up, and me, I would finally get what's rightfully mine." Larissa paled, hearing the words. Her mother covered her mouth, stifling a gasp, while her father clenched his fists, his face flushing with rage. This is just horrible," Larissa's mother whispered. "We had no idea he was capable of this." Her father shook his head. "He deceived us the whole time, played a role. Larissa, you were just a path to your money." Tears welled in Larissa's eyes, but these were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief. She finally understood that the man she had trusted, the one she had loved, had betrayed her for greed. And now, with the truth laid bare, she felt a heavy chain lift from her shoulders, freeing her from the silent, torturous battle for her own life. Together with her parents and Dr. Bruson, Larissa reported Kirill to the police. The case, long stalled, finally gained traction. Dr. Bruson and the authorities set a trap. They lured Kirill to the hospital under the pretense that Larissa's condition had worsened. The doctor insisted the meeting take place in his office under the guise of an important conversation. As Kirill entered, Dr. Bruson's expression was grave. "Kirill, we know everything. Polina recorded everything you said to Larissa, thinking no one could hear." Kirill went pale. His hands twitched nervously, attempting to speak, but Bruson continued, calm and steady. "Don't bother denying it. The police are already aware. It's better if you confess to what you've done." Realizing there was no escape, Kirill finally blurted out, "So what? Is it wrong to want a normal life? I just wanted to live normally." The police, overhearing from outside, immediately entered and arrested him. Larissa and her family watched with a mix of anger, pain, and immense relief. At last, she was free from the heavy burden of a relationship with someone cold and alien. Larissa felt overwhelming gratitude and affection toward Polina, the girl who had once been a stranger. Polina had saved her, not only from loneliness in a hospital room, but from the terrifying trap Kirill had laid. Larissa understood that their meeting had not been a coincidence. She invited Polina to live with her, and the girl froze for a moment in astonishment, before her eyes sparkled with joy. "You want me to be your daughter?" Polina whispered, barely daring to hope. Larissa nodded, smiling. "Yes, Polina, you're already like family to me. I want you here with me, so you'll finally have a home. You won't have to return to the orphanage." Polina's eyes filled with tears of happiness. A girl who had spent her life dreaming of a family, of someone to care for and protect her, finally found what she had longed for. For Larissa, it was a chance to give love and warmth to someone who needed it, and to fill her own heart with light and care. Her home became a place of safety, love, and trust, not just as a patient, but as someone who could rely on Dr. Bruson as a friend, a guide, and a protector. Together, Larissa, Polina, and the doctor began building a new life. Years passed, and their lives took on a peaceful rhythm. Larissa and Dr. Bruson grew inseparable, bound by shared experiences and care for Polina. Over time, they realized they wanted more than friendship. They wanted a family, a life intertwined not just by duty, but by love. In time, Larissa and Dr. Bruson welcomed a son into their lives. This moment became deeply special for them, a symbol of a new beginning and a sense of peace. Polina, overjoyed with her little brother, helped care for him with all the love and devotion she had for Larissa and Dr. Bruson. Their new life was filled with happiness and gratitude. They had finally found what they had long dreamed of, but had been afraid to hope for. Polina, now older and stronger in spirit, felt like a true part of this family every single day. She no longer felt lonely or unwanted. And although her life had grown warm and secure, there was always a special place in her room for one very important friend. Her plush teddy bear, the faithful companion who had been with her through her hardest and happiest moments, now held an honored spot on the shelf in her new room. To Polina, he was more than just a toy. He was a symbol of her past, her inner strength, and her belief in the good in the world. He was a reminder that miracles really do happen. Every time she looked at her bear, Polina remembered how this little friend had helped her overcome challenges, and how, when she thought miracles were impossible, her dream of a family had finally come true. Thank you for listening to this story. Apologies for any mistakes, and please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.